I hope that you are well, and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on adverbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. All right. So our chapter is adverbs. Our subject is English language arts, grade 8. And our lessons that we are focusing on under the chapter of adverbs is to identify adverbs, and to form and use comparative as well as superlative adverbs. All right, so we are doing adverbs, right? So an adverb is a word that describes or modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb, right? So an adverb is a word, that describes or modifies a verb, adjective, or another adverb. So it basically tells us more about the verb. An adverb will either tell you how, an adverb will tell you when, where, and an adverb will tell you to what extent or to what degree, right? So basically, some adverbs they tell us how. And when an adverb tells us how, then it means that the adverb this usually ends with an ly. So adverbs that tells us how, they usually end in ly. For example, how well does she play accordion? Then we can say she plays accordion splendidly, which means that our answer ends with a y. ly, splendidly. Then some of our adverbs that tell us when, right? So the question is like, when will he perform? Then we can either say he'll perform soon, right? So basically, when doesn't necessarily have to be when you give a specific date or time. You can just say things like soon. All right. So we said that adjectives, they tell us how, and some adverbs that tell us how they end in ly. Some adverbs that tell us when, and adverbs that tell us when, you can maybe use words like soon, right? And then we have adverbs that tell us where. Where, right? So it's like asking, where did she go? She went downstairs, she went outside, she's inside, right? Then some adverbs, they tell you what extent or to what degree. So to what extent or what degree, right? So to what extent or what degree is he reasonable? So now they can either say he is reasonable or he's not reasonable. So to what extent or to what degree is he reasonable? And we can be like, oh no, he is not reasonable, or yeah, he is quite reasonable. All right. So we said our adverbs, right? They tell us where, they tell us when, they tell us how, to what extent, or they tell us to what degree, right? And we say that usually adjectives that ends, adverbs, sorry, that tells us how, they end in ly. Then we have adverbs that tell us when, where, to what extent, or to what degree, right? Then we have adverbs, right, that basically compares, and we call that comparative adverbs. We have comparative adverbs as well as superlative adverb. So you can use adverbs to compare actions, right? We have a comparative adverb, and a comparative adverb, it compares the action of a person, a thing, or a group to the actions of some other person, thing, or group. All right. So we see that you can use adverbs to compare actions. We have a comparative adverb as well as a superlative adverb. And a comparative adverb, it compares the action of a person, a thing, or a group to the actions of some other people, things, or group. All right. Then we have superlative adverb, right? And a superlative adverb. And a superlative adverb, right? They compare actions of a person, thing, or group to the action of either a larger person that is part of it. So we see that we have comparative adverbs, right? And we have superlative adverbs. So basically, when it comes to comparative, it's like comparing something to one person, and then superlative adverbs, it's like comparing it to a group of people, right? All right. So we see that we have comparative adverbs as well as superlative adverbs, right? Comparative adverbs, it is we are comparing it to one person or thing. And then the superlative is where you are comparing the action of yourself to a larger group, right? But all right, so now we are going to our tutorial lesson, which is on aplusstudents.ca. All right. So now we're going into identifying adverbs, right? And this is where we're going to go over adverbs that tells us how, when, where, and to what extent, and to what degree, right? And remember, we see that an adverb, it tells us more about the noun, describes a noun, right? or we can say it modifies. Sorry, the verb, sorry, and the verb. So an adverb, it basically describes the verb, tells us more about the verb, modifies the verb, the adjective, or the adverb. All right. So we see that our adverbs that tells us how, when, where, to what extent, or to what degree, right? And adverbs that tells us how, they usually end in ly. All right. So if we tell our, if we basically say what the adverb tells us, right? So we say that adverb tells us how. And for example, we say these adverbs, they usually end in ly, right? For example, how well does this accord? How well does she play the accordion? Sorry, and then we can say she plays the accordion splendidly. So, which means that splendidly is our adverb, right? Then we have adverbs that tells you when. When will he perform? He will perform soon, right? Soon. Some adverbs that tell us where. It's like asking ourselves, where did she go? All right, so it tells us where, and then we can say, where did she go? She went downstairs, she went outside, she's right. Those are adverbs that tells us where. Then we have some of our adverbs that tell us to what extent or to what degree, right? So it's like asking yourself, like, to what extent or degree is he reasonable? To what extent or degree is he reasonable? So you can either say he is reasonable or he is not reasonable at all, right? So basically those are adverbs, and that it's adverbs that either tells us more about the verb, modifies the verb, or describes that verb, the adjective, or the adverb. All right, so here we have a word just surprisingly easy. Okay, that is must start afterwards. I said, I just discovered a surprisingly easy recipe for strawberry cream pie in an old cookbook. So I just discovered a surprisingly easy recipe for strawberry cream pie in an old cookbook. So which means that our adverbs are just and it is surprisingly. So just, it is basically the adverb that describes the verb discovered, and surprisingly is an adverb that describes the adjective, which is easy, right? And that is why we said that an adverb it either describes a verb, it can describe an adjective or describes an adverb, right? And like over here, we have a surprisingly describing an adjective, right? Here we have another one. It says Mr. Bennett, who once worked as a school janitor, proudly informed us that he had never taken a single sick day. So the word once, proudly, as well as never, right? Those are our adverbs, right? So once is an adverb that describes the verb worked. Proudly is an adverb that describes the verb informed. And never is an adverb that describes the verb or the verb phrase had taken. All right. So now we're going to our test, right? Where we are going to identify adverbs. And once again, we said adverbs, it either describes a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. So we need to select the three adverbs. We need to select the three adverbs, right? That's either going to tell us how, when, where, to what extent, or to what degree. All right, so if we select the three adverbs, the first one says, my landlord, who is amazingly handy, just fixed my leaky faucet and promised to repair my stove tomorrow. Or is it my landlord who is amazingly handy, just fixed my leaky faucet and promised to repair my stove tomorrow? So we need to choose the correct adverbs. All right, let's choose the second one, which is, oh, the first one is correct. It's amazingly handy. Just fixed it, as well as tomorrow, which tell us when. The donuts that I purchased yesterday were too stale to eat, so I discarded them. Or the donuts that I purchased yesterday were too stale to eat, so I discarded them. So we need to select the adverb. Which one is correct? So is it option 1 or is it option 2? So the donuts that I purchased yesterday, it was too stale to eat. So I discarded them. All right. And if we choose the correct one, yesterday tells us when, and the word stale is basically, it's stale can either be an adjective or it can be a verb, right? Let's go with this option. Right? So too stale to eat. All right, we need to select the two adverbs, right? It says, my dog Astro is completely loyal to me, but my cat generally ignores me. Or is it the second option, same one, but the different words are chosen? My dog Astro is completely loyal to me, but my cat generally ignores me. All right. So now we need to select the two adverbs. Is it completely and generally, or completely and but? All right, let's choose the first one. So how does he is completely loyal, how, and he ignores me generally, right? We now need to select three adverbs. Three adverbs. It says the TV station is forecasting severely cold weather, so Ellie and I will stay inside today. So we can say that these three adverbs, it's either severely, Ellie, inside, or it is severely, inside, and today. What do you think is the three adverbs which either tells us more about the verb, the adverb, or the adjective. All right, so if we choose the three adverbs, right, that either describes the verb, the adverb, or or the adjective, then we'll choose the second option, right? All right, we need to select the two adverbs. I am almost certain that I left my jacket outside on the porch. So we need to select the two adverbs. Is it almost certain, outside, or almost certain, porch? Right? Let's go with the first option. All right. So now we're going to form a comparative and a superlative adverb. Remember we said that um, we can compare adverbs, right? So we have comparative adverbs as well as superlative adverbs. And a comparative adverb, it compares an action of a person, thing, or group to an action of a person, of another person, thing, or group, right? Then we have a superlative adverb, which compare the action of a person, thing, or group to the action of a larger group that is part of it. All right. So when it comes to comparative adverbs, right? Once again, we compare the actions of a person, thing, or group to another person, thing, or group. Whereas superlative, it compares it to a larger group, right? So it's like you're comparing yourself to a larger group or to the whole class or to everybody at the workplace, for example, right? And then we have adverbs that have one syllable. And adverbs with one syllable, they end in ER, right? And that is to make the comparative adverb. And then we add EST to make the superlative adverb. And that is, yes, the superlative adverb. And if the base is in E, then we drop the E before adding ER or EST. So you basically just add EST or you add R, depending. All right. And if we look at, here's an example also, right? of our adverbs. We have our base word, we have our comparative adverb, as well as a superlative adverb, right? Our base word is, for example, soon. These are adverbs with one syllable, right? So which means that they're either going to end in ER or they're going to end in EST. ER for the comparative adverb and EST for the superlative adverb, right? Because they end in one syllable. So soon, right? Comparative sooner, superlative soonest. Base is close, comparative closer, and superlative closest. All right. Then we have adverbs that have more than one syllable, right? And when adverbs have more than one syllable, we either add more to make the comparative adverb or we add most to make the superlative adverb. For example, safely. This is two syllables. Safely. So you can say I most like it is more safely or it is the most safely, right? So safely we have more as a comparative and we have most as a superlative adverb. And then for the adverb early, right? If we maybe have the adverb early, right, that ends in Y, and then it means that we will drop the Y and we will add the IER to make to make the comparative adverb. We will then add IST to make the superlative and adverb. All right. So for example, we can say, here's our base word, which is early. If we compare that, then we can say, I'm earlier than Jake, right? If we compare it to a larger group, then you can say I am the earliest in the class. So now you are comparing yourself to a larger group that is superlative. Comparative is like where you're comparing yourself to like either one person, right? All right, let's go to our test before we end our lesson. We are going to now use the comparative or superlative adverb, right? The man running the antiques auction do we say talks even fast than Ross does or talks faster than Ross does? All right. So we can then say the man running the antiques auction talks even faster than Ross does. Because remember, we are comparing, right? If you're comparing one person, or let's say to another person, then we add ER. Lamont seems to think the do we say most scientifically of all my friends or scientifically of all my friends? So now we can say that Lamont seems to think remember we said that if your adverb is more than one syllable, right, two or more syllables, then we either add more to the comparative adverb or we add most to the comparative. So here we're going to say, Lamont seems to think the most scientifically of all my friends, because it has two syllables. So we add more or we add most, depending if it is comparative or superlative. Now that I have crutches, I can move around, do we say independently than I could before? Or I can move around more independently than I could before. All right. It says now that I have crutches, I can move around, do we say independently than I could before, or more independently than I could before? We need to choose the correct one. All right. Usually, more independently will mean that you're comparing yourself to someone else, because it says now that I have crutches, I can move around more independently. Let's go with independently. It's more independently because it's got two syllables, right? See, sometimes it can be very confusing because now you think to yourself like you need to actually compare to someone, but you're actually comparing it to yourself, right? Anyways, so Joel behaves do we say the most maturely of any young man that I've ever met, or maturely, right? So this is going to be a superlative adverb because he's being compared to any young man. So we can say most maturely, right? All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on adverbs. We said adverbs, they describe the verb, they modify the verb, the adjective, as well as an adjective, right? We also have adverbs that compare, and if it compares, then we have comparative adverbs as well as superlative adverbs. Comparative adverbs are when we compare, let's say, you're comparing yourself to someone else or something else. And then superlative adverbs is when you compare yourself to a larger group, right? And if our adverb is two or more syllables, right, then we add more or most to our adverbs. We add more to the comparative adverb and we add most to the superlative adverbs, right? All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on adverbs. Thank you very much, grade 8s, for joining our class. And I really hope that you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.